Welcome back to the Burning Branches podcast.
This is something special.
I don't want to put a lot of your business out there, Christian, but I will say that something that I've noticed, one thing that I really admire of you, is I knew you after this shift happened, but there was a shift in your life where you had to recalculate how you were moving forward completely, right? What was the major thing, the major principle or virtue that God showed to you that stuck and was able to transition that season of your life completely? What was the greatest turning point?
I would say that it was around the time where I started to have a little bit of a health scare. And it was a period of my life where I was in a point of transition. I thought I would be moving out on my own. I thought I would be, starting to provide for myself, pay my own bills, car notes and whatever. But that ended up being a season where I had to rely on people more than I ever had before. And it was in that moment of transition where I could have chosen to just be bedridden, to be by myself, to feel lonely. Or I could have chosen to rely on my brothers and my sisters in Christ. I could have chosen to rely on my pastor. And in choosing the latter, in choosing to see just how many hands really were around me, reaching to see if they could help, that I found my family, that I found brothers that I didn't even know that I had, and that I found a community that has been my lifeblood.
So you had to learn this principle of interdependence rather than independence and relying on other people. And that was the shift. That was the turning point in your season.
I was at a place where I only knew how to rely on myself. And through this situation, the Lord helped me to see just how much help I really did have, and that I didn't have to be on myself. And even rather than I didn't have to be, I shouldn't be.
That's a hard lesson to learn, especially as a man, right? As we want to take on the burden. We want to be. His name escapes me, but that Greek mythology where he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. Atlas, that's the one. And we almost want to be Atlas. We'd be like, I'm going to take on the weight of my whole world on my shoulders. Your weight too? Give me some of that. Right. And then we find out we might not be able to bear that so much.
Yeah, I think most men underestimate the importance of their relational ability. Because we take so much pride in our ability to provide that we lose focus of how important we are when it comes to presence, how important we are and when it comes to understanding and sharing emotions with others. Because I think society almost portrays men to be the macho. But typically, like, men are portrayed to be like, oh, you have to provide for the family. But there's so much importance. There's other importance or other important aspects that a man provides in that aspect in terms of relationship, being emotionally present. And just even when it comes to your relationship with your wife, I've heard someone said on a podcast I was listening to, says he lay 2 inches next to his wife, but then felt like his wife felt like she was 2,000 miles away from him. I'm like, how is that even possible? He's present, but not present in that regard. So that's a different conversation.
It is, but it's a good thought, right? Because there's also recognizing the needs of what's around you, right? And sometimes the need isn't necessarily a physical thing, but it's an emotional thing.
That is
true. You should be able to recognize that, right? True. And it's interesting that you mentioned, like, there's different ways to conceive of time. One of those things that I think about it is I've been meditating on Psalm 23, and there was a new understanding that I got from it when he says, leading me down paths of righteousness, right? Because it's a path. Righteousness is not a goal, it's a path. Right. And so it's in the journey, it's in the movement, it's in the pushing forward. And that's where righteousness is where God is. He is moving with you. Right.
That's right. And
so it's in the movement, it's in the motion, it's in that nature. Right. So when we're settled and we're still, right, what energy is there when there's something that's still?
Potential.
That's it. There's only potential energy. So how do you turn that potential energy into kinetic? Right.
Movement. You add force, some kind of force to it. Or
You
some outside force has to move it.
You need a catalyst. You need something to move it. So there has to be a reaction, right? There has to be a reaction. And so something has to spark, and and something has to catch that spark, right? And so, like Brother Marcez was saying, just like learning to read your word, right? And letting that fuel and then turning that fuel into action.
That's right.
That's almost, it's like a combustion engine. It's as simple as that, right? We actually can't make an engine more complicated. They're all the same. They're just more ways to do the same thing. How do we make fire turn something into energy? It's as simple as that. And it's just like, well, we want to push something forward. All right, let's get a combustion process. We need to input some fuel. We need to input a spark. All right, now we've got some energy. We can do something with it. And our lives are no different.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Even if it relate to the shifts that God puts us through, right? We talked about this off air, right? The meal plan that changes because from the beginning, you're sucking your thumb, you're drinking milk, you're crying every day. But now it's like, no, you're not drinking milk anymore, right? I'm going to serve you the sirloin, sirloin steak. I'm gonna serve you that ribeye, bro. Like the marbling on the steak is something special, right? And
apologies
so, like,
to anyone fasting out there.
but yeah, there's this shift. There's this shift that happens when we understand the season of life that God has put in us, right? And Christian fast more than anyone that I know. Well, maybe not my pastor, but he, no, truly though, because sometimes you get to your seasons where God will specifically ask you to fast for a period of time, and so you have to understand those seasons and maximize those seasons. But sometimes we miss those Kairos moments because we're just not sensitive to it, or we're just not aware of it in that aspect.
When the disciples are going to Jesus and they're like, how will we know? And he's like, look at the fields. They're white with harvest. It's time to go right now. They're like, how do we know? When is the time to action? And he's like, have you looked at the fields? They're ready to go. And so there has to be this kind of a constant awareness that, like, the fields are out there, and it's time to go right now. Like, what are you waiting on? That's actually one of my favorite things. I've been listening to a little bit of Jocko Willink lately to kind of get me spurred up.
Jocko Willink. That's
one of the things that he says. He says, when's the best time? Right now. You know what you got to do? You got to go do it. That's it. It's as simple as that.
That is true. That is true. Because I strongly believe that if we master the chronos of time, when the Kairos moment comes up, we would just pounce right on it because we're mastering the chronos of time. We're mastering the ticking of the second. We're mastering every day. But sometimes we just don't master the chronos of time. And so when Kairos happens, we're not even ready. If someone wants to be on stage as a singer, right? The moment where his moment of his opportunity is not when he's on stage, when he gets the moment to be on stage. That's not when he shows that he's good. You're going to start showing if you're good by practicing every single day. It's like pastors say, like, he just be scrubbing the toilet. He's just scrubbing the toilet. That's just taking account of your chronos moment. You're teaching the young men and women, right? You're taking all these moments into consideration, but then your Kairos moment comes in, and since you've been preparing over the entire time, when the Kairos moments comes in, you have to what? You have the potential enough to convert that into kinetic energy, or to take that opportunity or take that moment and to maximize that opportunity in that sense. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's interesting. I think it's important that when those moments come, our fire's stoked, right? You don't want to be found like, hey, it's time to go. We need to cook this food. How's the stove doing? Oh, we got I got a couple twigs on there. I forgot about the stove. It's like, it's time to cook, boy. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up for today. We thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Burning Branches podcast. Don't forget, visit our YouTube page. Check out some of the content we got on there. Leave a like, subscribe.
And don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts as well. This is one of my favorite platforms. Leave a review on there, and then don't forget to follow them.